I still remember the first night I served them. The chandeliers hung low enough to make anyone feel small, and that's exactly what they did to me. It was Friday. The kind of Friday where the city's elite traded decency for dinner reservations. And I, Ethan Moore, was the man holding the tray. To them, I was invisible. That's the secret of fine dining. The better you serve, the less they see you. The restaurant was called La Maison d'Or. French name, American arrogance. Every inch of it screamed money. Crystal glasses, white tablecloths, and a piano that played itself. I'd worked there for 3 years. Quiet, efficient, never late, never loud. Not because I loved the job, but because sometimes you learn more watching people eat than talking to them. That night, a man and a woman took the corner table, the kind of couple that looked rich enough to mistake patience for servitude. He wore a navy suit that cost more than my monthly rent. She wore silence, the kind that hides behind expensive jewelry. "Water, room temperature," he said without looking up. "Yes, sir," I replied. He glanced up briefly, frowned. "And please use the other waiter next time." "I prefer someone faster," I nodded. The pianist kept playing. The air didn't move. I poured the water anyway, slow and steady, the way you do when you've stopped expecting respect. When I turned to leave, he added, "Oh, and tell your manager, and we'll be talking to the owner about your attitude." That made me smile. Just a little, because I already knew he would, and that conversation would be interesting. 10 minutes later, I stood by the service counter, watching him wave his hand at me again, the universal sign for "you're beneath me." He snapped his fingers. "Excuse me, we've been waiting." "Of course," I said. "The chef's preparing your special order." He looked surprised. "You know what I ordered?" "Yes," I said, smiling faintly. "You like your steak medium rare. Your wine, Chateau Margaux, 2016, and you always ask for the check before dessert because you hate tipping after you've eaten." He blinked. The woman looked up for the first time. "You've been here before," I said softly. "With someone else." The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was sharp. He stared at me, trying to decide whether to be angry or afraid. I didn't move, didn't smile. Didn't need to. Some truths don't need volume to echo. When I walked away, I could feel their eyes burning into my back. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel small, because I knew something they didn't. Tomorrow morning, that same man was coming to interview for an investment proposal, and I was the one interviewing him. Morning light has a strange way of making the world look cleaner than it really is. Maybe that's why rich men prefer to sign deals before noon. It's easier to believe in illusions while the coffee's still hot. I arrived early. Not as the waiter from last night, but as myself. Ethan Moore, founder of La Maison d'Or Group. The suit fit better than the uniform ever did. But the silence felt the same. I'd learned long ago, money changes clothes faster than people change manners. At 9 sharp, the elevator doors opened. And there he was, the man from table 7. Same tailored arrogance, different tie. For a second, he didn't recognize me. Funny how respect depends on context. He extended his hand confidently. "Mr. Moore, I'm Daniel Graves, senior investor from Lexington Holdings. It's an honor to finally meet you." I shook his hand, firm, still. "Pleasure's mine, Mr. Graves." He smiled the way men do when they think they're in control. "I had dinner at your restaurant last night. Excellent atmosphere. Staff could use some discipline, though." "Oh?" I said. "Did something happen?" "Just poor service." The waiter was slow, and a bit too familiar, if you ask me. I leaned back slightly, studying him. He had no idea. The universe must have been laughing quietly somewhere behind me. I opened the folder in front of me. "Well, Mr. Graves, you mentioned an interest in funding our next expansion. Tell me, what drew you to La Maison d'Or?" "Reputation," he said. "Your brand screams exclusivity, refined, elite. Exactly the kind of clientele we cater to." I smiled. "I see. And tell me, do you believe in treating your partners with the same respect as your clients?" He frowned slightly. "Of course." "Good. Because last night one of your potential partners was serving you water. His brow tightened. I'm sorry. The waiter you criticized was me, Silence, the kind that doesn't need music to feel loud. He blinked, then forced a chuckle, the kind rich men use to bargain with shame. You're joking. No, I said calmly. But it's all right. You were honest, and that's rare in this business. His face turned pale. Mr. Moore, I had no idea. That's the point, Daniel. You didn't have to know who I was to treat me better. He lowered his eyes, for the first time, like a man realizing mirrors exist. I'm truly sorry, he said quietly. I was tired, stressed. We're all tired, Mr. Graves. The difference is how we handle it. He nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't defend. And for a moment, I saw something human behind all that polish. I closed the folder. Your proposal is strong, but I don't invest with people who see service as weakness. He exhaled, shoulders slumping. Then tell me what I can do to fix that. I smiled faintly. Come back tonight. Same restaurant, same table, but this time you'll serve. He looked stunned. You want me to be a waiter? No, I said. I want you to understand what respect tastes like when you have to earn it. When I told Daniel to come back that night, I wasn't sure he actually would. Men like him rarely return to the scene of their own arrogance. But at exactly 7 o'clock, the front doors of La Maison d'Or opened. And there he was. Different suit, same man, but this time, no confidence in the walk. Just caution. I met him at the entrance. You came, I said. He nodded. You asked. I said I wanted to make it right. Then follow me. I led him past the gold-trimmed hallways, past the chandeliers he once looked down from, to the narrow service corridor, the one where the music doesn't reach and the air smells like effort. He looked around, uneasy. It's smaller than I imagined. That's what humility feels like the first time. I handed him a folded apron. Put this on. He hesitated, then did as told. The white apron looked strange over his designer shirt, like pride wearing disguise. You'll shadow one of our staff tonight, I said. Learn how to serve without being seen. And if I fail, then you'll finally understand the people you stepped on. His first table was a couple celebrating their anniversary. He poured water too fast, spilled wine, forgot to smile, got scolded by the head waiter. Each mistake stripped another layer of polish off him, until only a man remained, not an investor, not a title, just a person trying not to disappoint. An hour later, he came to me between orders, hands trembling slightly. It's harder than it looks, he said. Everything is, once you care about how it feels on the other side. He looked at me, then nodded, slowly this time, like a man hearing a truth that doesn't need proof. Around 9 p.m., an older guest snapped his fingers at him. Waiter, over here! Daniel froze. Old reflex. He turned, forced a smile, and went to take the order. The man barked at him for bringing the wrong wine. The woman beside him rolled her eyes. For a moment, I thought Daniel might walk out, but instead he bowed slightly and said, My apologies, sir. Let me fix that. When he walked back to the counter, I caught his eye. He just said, Now I get it. By closing time, his shirt was stained, his collar loosened, and his voice hoarse from quiet apologies. I walked up beside him. You can stop now, I said. Lesson's over. He exhaled, a mix of exhaustion and relief. You really think one night changes anything? He asked. No, I said, but it changes you. And that's where everything starts. As he untied the apron, he looked at me with something I hadn't seen before, respect that wasn't forced. I don't deserve your patience, he said quietly. You don't, I said. But I'm giving it anyway. He smiled, small, humble. Why? Because someone once did the same for me. The next morning, the restaurant felt quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes after noise, but the kind that follows change. The tables were still being reset, the air still smelled of polished wood and coffee. And yet, everything felt lighter, as if someone had opened a window inside the building. Daniel showed up just before noon. No suit this time. Just a plain shirt, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired but clearer. He didn't walk like a man who owned the room anymore. He walked like a man who respected it. "You're early," I said. "Habit," he replied, smiling faintly. "Turns out waiting tables teaches punctuality," I chuckled. "It also teaches patience." "Yeah," he said quietly. "And humility." He looked around the dining hall, the chandeliers reflecting soft gold on the marble floor. "It's beautiful," he said. "I never noticed how much detail goes into everything." "Most people don't," I said. "They only see the plate, not the hands that carry it." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Listen, Ethan. About the partnership—" "You don't want it anymore?" I interrupted gently. "No, I don't deserve it." He said it like a confession. "Not dramatic, just true. I came here thinking I was bringing you money. But you've already given me something I didn't know I was missing." "What's that?" "Perspective." For a moment, we just stood there. Two men who, a few nights ago, wouldn't have shared a table, now sharing a silence that meant more than words. I walked over to the counter and placed a folder on it. "That's the updated proposal," I said. "Your name's still on it." He looked confused. "Why, after everything?" "Because I believe the best apology isn't words. It's consistency," he blinked. "You're serious." "Completely." He took a slow breath, as if the air itself was heavier now that it meant something. "Ethan," he said, "you have every reason not to trust me." "True. And yet you do." "Also true." "Why?" "Because if I only trusted perfect people, I'd be alone in every room I enter." He laughed softly, the kind of laugh that sounds like letting go. "You know," he said, "you could have humiliated me. You had every chance." "I didn't want revenge," I said. "I wanted reflection." He nodded slowly. "You got it." We signed the papers in silence. No speeches. No champagne. Just ink, intention, and a handshake that actually meant something this time. When he stood to leave, he hesitated at the door. "You know what's funny?" he said. "Last night I thought I was learning about service. But really I was learning about grace." "Same thing if you do it right," I said. After he left, I walked back to table 7, the one where it all began. The light hit it just right, catching the edge of a wine glass and scattering it across the room like little pieces of forgiveness. I smiled. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers, and if you're lucky, you learn to listen. It's strange how peace sneaks up on you, quietly, like a waiter who knows when not to interrupt. 3 weeks had passed since Daniel and I last spoke. The partnership was signed, the papers filed, the lessons learned, or so I thought. Until one Tuesday evening, I found myself back in La Maison d'Or, not as the owner, not as the teacher, just observing. Sometimes the best view of humanity comes from the corner seat. The dinner rush was gentle that night. Soft music, the clink of silver, and laughter from tables where problems didn't exist, at least not until the check arrived. At table 5, a group of executives in designer suits sat down, loud, confident, entitled, the kind of men Daniel used to be. A young waiter, Michael, approached them. New hire, nervous smile. Too polite for his own good. "Good evening, gentlemen. Can I get you started with something to drink?" One of them smirked. "Sure, surprise us." "Something expensive? But make it quick." Michael nodded, scribbling it down, his hand trembling slightly. I could tell how this story usually ended. But not tonight, because sitting 2 tables away was Daniel. He hadn't seen me yet. Didn't need to. He was watching, just like I was. And I could see it in his eyes. He recognized the moment. The first executive snapped his fingers. "Hey, is this what you call quick service?" Michael froze. His ears turned red. He stammered. I'll check on it right away, sir." He started to walk off, but Daniel stood up, calm, controlled. Same composure I once used. He approached their table quietly. "Gentlemen," he said, voice even. I couldn't help overhearing. You might want to remember that he's serving, not submitting." The men looked up, half confused, half offended. "And who exactly are you?" one of them asked. Daniel smiled slightly. "A customer who used to forget what respect looked like." The silence after that was clean. Like a room freshly aired out, the executive grumbled, muttered something about soft men. But he didn't speak again. Michael returned with the wine, hands still shaking, but this time Daniel helped him pour it. No speech, no grand gesture, just quiet grace. When he turned to leave, he caught sight of me, and that old smirk, the arrogant one, was gone, replaced by something simple, recognition, not the kind built from shame, but from growth. He walked over. "Didn't expect to see you here tonight," he said. "Didn't expect to see you serving justice?" I replied. He laughed softly. "Guess I learned from the best." "No," I said. "You learned from the experience. I just gave it a name." We stood there a while, watching the young waiter regain his rhythm. The executives now quiet, their laughter tempered by reflection. "It's strange," Daniel said. "You spend your whole life thinking respect comes from power until one night someone hands you a tray and proves you wrong. And you never forget that weight," I said. "No," he smiled, "but it's lighter when you carry it right." When he left that night, he didn't take anything from the restaurant, not the wine, not the deal, just the silence he'd earned. I watched him step into the city lights, the glow catching on his face, and I realized something I hadn't before. Sometimes, you don't need to teach again. You just need to witness the echo. The letter came on a Wednesday, handwritten, no logo, no seal, just my name on the envelope and a return address I didn't recognize. Inside, one line. "You once taught me to serve with dignity. Tonight, I'd like you to see what that lesson built." At the bottom, a name. Daniel Graves. I smiled. It had been months since that night at La Maison d'Or. He'd taken the partnership, but I hadn't seen him since. Only heard whispers. That he'd left his firm, walked away from deals that didn't align with his conscience, and now, apparently, he was opening a place of his own. That evening, I followed the address. It wasn't downtown. No skyscrapers, no red carpets. Just a quiet corner street bathed in warm light. A small wooden sign above the door read simply, "Grace," the kind of name you don't need to explain. Inside, the air smelled of fresh bread and new beginnings. The decor was simple. Brick walls, soft jazz, tables made from reclaimed wood. It felt human. And behind the counter, there he was. Daniel, apron on, sleeves rolled, greeting guests like old friends. When he saw me, his face lit up. "Ethan," he said, "you actually came." "I had to see what humility looks like with a grand opening," I said. He laughed, a real laugh, not polished, not forced. "Welcome to Grace." I looked around. "It's beautiful. Yours?" "Ours," he corrected. "Half of this place is run by people no one else would hire." "Meaning?" He gestured toward the kitchen. "Former convicts. Single parents who got rejected because they couldn't fit the schedule. One guy was a dishwasher who got fired for taking leftovers home." He smiled. "Here they get a second chance. Not out of charity, but out of fairness." I took a slow breath. The space hummed with warmth, the kind that doesn't come from heaters, but from people rediscovering worth. "You've come far," I said. "You didn't just learn the lesson, you built it." "You once told me forgiveness doesn't erase the past," Daniel said, "but it can write the next chapter." I wanted to see if that was true, and, turns out it is. He led me to a corner table. The same corner layout as La Maison d'Or, but without the chandeliers. Just candlelight and honesty. A young waitress approached, maybe 19, nervous but bright. Daniel smiled at her. "Take care of this guest. He's the reason this place exists." She looked confused. "Oh, okay, sir," I chuckled. "That's a lot of pressure." "You'll manage," Daniel said. Dinner was simple. Homemade pasta, fresh bread. No pretense, no gold. Just flavor, honest and earned. When I was done, Daniel sat across from me. "You know," he said, I used to think owning something meant control. Now I realize it means responsibility. You learned fast. Good teacher. We sat there a while, watching customers laugh, waiters smile, and life unfold without spectacle. When I left that night, he walked me to the door. Outside, the street lamps glowed softly, and a handwritten sign hung by the door. Everyone deserves a table. I turned to him. You really believe that? I have to, he said. Someone once believed it for me. It was a Friday night when Grace met its first real test. The kind of night where the city's rich came out to feel generous, and the rain fell like it was washing away their guilt. Was sitting in my usual corner, the observer's seat, the one that lets you see everything without saying a word. The restaurant glowed warm against the storm outside. Candles flickered. Laughter filled the air. And then the door opened. A man walked in, tall, sharp suit, sharper tone. He didn't take off his coat. Didn't glance at the hostess. He just scanned the room like he was looking for something to own. He took a seat near the window, snapped his fingers for service. Someone get me a menu, he barked. And hurry, I don't like waiting. The young waitress, the same one who'd served me before, approached him, smiling nervously. Good evening, sir. Welcome to Grace. Would you like still or sparkling water? Does it matter? Just bring it, and tell your chef to move faster than the decor. The table nearby went silent. A few guests looked up. The girl's hand trembled as she scribbled notes. Her voice barely held. Of course, sir. And don't mess up the order. You people always forget the details. Before she could answer, a calm voice cut through the tension. That's enough. It was Daniel. He walked over slowly, no anger, no threat, just presence. The kind of calm that silences a storm. Is there a problem here, sir? He asked. The man leaned back, sneering. Who's asking? The waiter or the janitor? Neither, Daniel said softly. The owner. That landed like thunder. The man blinked, his smirk faltering. Owner, huh? He scoffed. Then you should train your staff better. They act like they've never seen real money. Daniel smiled faintly. Oh, they've seen it. They just learned it's not always worth respecting. The room went completely still. Even the rain outside seemed to listen. The man's face tightened. You'll regret talking to me like that. Maybe, Daniel said. But not as much as you'll regret treating people like furniture. The guest stood up, tall, furious, ready to leave. Daniel didn't stop him. Didn't raise his voice. He simply said, if you'd like to eat, we'll serve you gladly. If you'd like to shout, there's a storm outside that'll echo you better. The man froze for a second, then stormed out into the rain. The door closed behind him with a soft thud, not loud, but final. The waitress stood there, eyes wide, unsure what to do. Daniel turned to her, offered a kind smile. Take 5 minutes, then come back and serve someone who deserves your kindness. She nodded, voice small. Thank you, sir. From my corner, I watched it all unfold. The way Daniel handled it, no pride, no punishment, just quiet control. He caught my eye. We didn't need words. He'd passed the test. Later that night, after the guests left and the lights dimmed, I walked over to him. He was wiping down a table, humming softly. You did well, I said. I just followed your example, he replied. No, I smiled. You followed your conscience. He looked up, thoughtful. Funny thing about storms, he said. They make you realize what's sturdy enough to stay standing. And what's not, I added. We both laughed quietly. The storm passed in the night. By morning, the city smelled like renewal, wet pavement, clean air, and the faint scent of possibility. I found myself walking toward Grace again. No appointment, no reason, just something that felt like closure calling my name. The sky was pale gold, the kind of light that doesn't blind you. It heals you. When I reached the door, Daniel was outside, hanging something above the entrance, a small wooden sign, hand-carved, letters etched deep and proud. Respect served here. He turned when he heard me. You came early. Couldn't sleep, I said. Old men like me tend to chase meaning before breakfast. He laughed, stepping off the ladder. How's it look? Honest, I said. And that's rarer than perfect. We stood there for a while, watching the first few customers approach. A young couple, a delivery man, a woman with paint-stained hands. No tuxedos. No champagne. Just life. Inside, the waitress from before, the one who'd been shouted at, was setting tables. This time her smile was steady, her movements confident. She's good, I said. She's better than good, Daniel replied. She's proof that kindness sticks. He looked out across the street, where the puddles still mirrored the sky. You know, he said, I used to think you taught me forgiveness. Didn't I? No, he smiled. You taught me patience. Forgiveness came later, when I forgave myself. That made me pause. Because he was right. Forgiving others is easy when you've never looked at your own reflection long enough. We went inside. The piano played softly, same melody as at La Maison d'Or, but somehow warmer now, less polished, more alive. Daniel brewed 2 coffees, brought them to the counter. On the house, he said. Owner's privilege. I'll take it, I smiled. He handed me the cup. Steam rose between us, like memory made visible. You ever think about how it started? I asked. Just a meal? One bad night. One bad night that made a good life, he said. I guess storms have a purpose after all. They wash the streets, I said. And sometimes they wash people too. I finished my coffee, left a small folded napkin on the counter before heading out. Old habits die hard. When Daniel opened it after I left, it read simply, Never forget. Respect is the most expensive thing you can give for free. He smiled, looked toward the window, where sunlight spilled across the words on the sign, Respect served here. As I stepped into the morning light, I glanced back one last time. The rain had stopped, but the street still shimmered, not from water, but from something brighter. Maybe that's what justice looks like when it finally learns to whisper.